I'm your host for the next 45 minutes or so. And what I want to share with you today is really this is a broad topic and a lot of directions that can go in. And what I want to do is share based on my experiences. I've had the great good fortune to do some really cool things internationally, predominantly in the manufacturing space. But in my current role as CEO Lenara International, my consulting firm, I work with all kinds of different companies, large and small, that are looking to grow and expand domestically and internationally. So there are some very common themes, threads, and challenges that those businesses face. And I want to walk you through some of those things today. So, at the heart of it is manufacturers large and small are sitting on more innovation and resources and growth potential than they realize. And what I want to do today is at least show you a couple of ways that we can unlock that a little bit for you. Okay. So with that said, we'll move forward. The prospect of going global, it can seem overwhelming. I get it. There are so many things and directions and opinions out there in particular that frankly scare a lot of people away. And I don't want you to be afraid of it. Today. The key point I really want to get across for you is that the technology and the platforms are really the easy part to what this is all about. The heavy lifting around your global decision is really with regard to the overall strategy. So I'm probably going to spend a disproportionate amount of time on that because that's the most important part for you. But let's take some steps forward. So I know what you're thinking. It can all seem so terribly overwhelming. You're not lacking for data or information. If anything, you're drowning in it. Going global is a big step, but you don't need to be stuck at the starting gate. Okay. The number one reason I see businesses delay or ignore exploring taking their business global is because they're weighed down by bad, outdated, incorrect information about what it takes and what it's like to go global. Sometimes we're guilty of listening to advice from people that have never taken the path that you're interested in taking. There's no shortage of opinions, but what you really need are some facts. And sometimes we get stuck on a fable of failure. And you've all heard these things. That's what gets circulated in our business circles. It's that story. Remember what happened to Wendy when she tried to ship her product to Hong Kong? What a mess that was. There's no context or follow-up, just a scary thing that fuels our fear of the unknown. So what I want to do today is ground you in some facts, give you some reality. So the first section I want to share with you today is really to get you in a place of possibility. Okay, just you've got to kind of get past the, ooh, this is scary and I don't know. It's not scary. You will know, and it is something you can do. And extra credit points for anybody that can name what movie that image happens to be from. So the first myth I want to get off the table right away is that going global is expensive. I've been doing international business since 1985, and there was a time when it was expensive. The only way you could do it. It was a lot of airplane rides. It was a lot of accounting firms. It was a lot of lawyers. It was an expensive proposition because it was unique. That's not the case anymore. So this is one of those things, one of those examples of outdated information. You're all here today because you either know or you have a sense that there is a faster, smoother, less costly path to international markets. That doesn't mean you're not going to need to get some legal advice, but it's so much easier to rent that today than it was in the past. So I don't want you to think that it's expensive. You also have a lot of help. There are so many resources available today for businesses of all kinds. And this is one of those areas where, remember I said about don't take advice from people that have never actually expanded globally. These are just a small sample of organizations that can answer the questions you know you should be asking, and answer the questions you didn't even know you should be asking. Here are some of the platforms. There are federal resources out there like SBA, U.S. Commercial Services, Exim Bank. These are all places where before you even pick up the phone, you can go online and research and find out, hey, what kind of insights and resources and advice can they provide to you so that you can make good decisions about your business? State and local resources. I'm from Illinois, so I put in IMEC Illinois, which is the local MEP that we deal with, Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. There are organizations like this in every state that are out there, and it's their job to help businesses in those states be productive, help them thrive, get them answers. Organizations such as the Temple SBDC that is available for you and brought you to this session here today. There are international resources out there. If there's a particular sector of the world, are you looking at Southeast Asia? Are you looking at a particular country, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, something like that? There are a couple of ways you can go about getting information on those markets, one of which is the American Chamber of Commerce has offices in I don't know how many hundred different countries around the world. And what that allows you to do is to connect with other U.S. businesses that are already doing business in that region. So you get to reach out and have a conversation with a peer about what it's like doing business in those areas. There are also, each country has its own economic development resources, usually going both directions. In many cases, they have an office such as what I've listed here, MIDA, which is the Malaysian Investment Development Authority. They happen to be a client of mine, and their mission is to help U.S. companies find ways to do more business and possibly expand into Malaysia. So there are an abundance of resources out there that can help you. Not to mention the platforms themselves. I put up just a couple: Alibaba, Shopify. You can go to Amazon. There are a number of e-commerce platforms out there. The sophistication and ease of use, if you're not already engaged or working with them, they're shockingly easy to engage with and extremely helpful. Their businesses are built around, again, helping you be successful. So this is something to really keep in mind. There are so many great resources out there. And what I want to do is demonstrate that this reinforces the notion that the technology and the platforms and even getting the information, that's not the challenge. Okay, the important thing for you to focus on is going to be the strategy, and we're going to spend some more time digging on that. So, are there any questions about costs or resources at this point out there, Sarah? I don't know if there's anything's popped up in the chat.
Nope, just someone did ask a great question. They might have hopped on a little late, and the answer is yes. You will be receiving a copy of today's PowerPoint and a link to the recording in a follow-up email within 1 to 2 days after the session. But if you have questions, as a reminder, please do put them in the chat as they come in. I think we're good for now, though, Ray.
Perfect. Thank you. So myth number 2 that I really want to get to is many businesses kind of feel that my company is too small to go global. And there's 3 key things you need to keep in mind if that's what you think right now. The first is that's wrong. The second is that's wrong. The third is, that's wrong. I've been doing business globally, as I mentioned, since 1985. Since then, the explosive growth of what's going on with mobile, e-commerce, third-party logistics services, video conferencing, virtual showrooms, so many of the things that added friction to the global trade process have been smoothed out, and they've been smoothed out dramatically. So I don't want you to feel that you're too small to go global. That is definitely not the case. In fact, I think I have a pretty compelling case for why actually being small is an advantage for you. And I like this slide because typically in a small organization, number one, you just don't have a lot of layers, and the culture and the attitude and the energy is still very much that of the founder. So you don't have a lot of people necessarily playing it safe and a lot of different layers. So this is a bit tongue in cheek, but there's also a bit of truth that rings through in this. So something I want you to keep in mind is that small and medium-sized enterprises have an inherent advantage when they're going global. And here's what I mean by inherent advantage. You're not burdened by layers of bureaucracy. It's easier for small companies to pivot and iterate. Why does that matter? Because if you do some experimenting, put a toe in the water, decide you really want to place a bet and go in a particular direction, it's much easier for you to change directions if you need to modify your approach. So that gives you a big advantage. Big organizations, it's difficult to make abrupt or very sharp changes in direction. Small organizations can pivot so much easier. The other advantage is, going global is very much a change experience for your organization. Whether it's just you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. If you have some help, and you've got a staff, small or large, they're going to get an opportunity to learn and experience and do some different things. And in a smaller organization, more of your people get a front row seat to what's going on. And that I've seen leads to higher engagement. People get excited. They want to be part of something that's growing and expanding. You know that. You started the business. That's motivated you, and your passion is motivating others. So hopefully you see that the myth is busted, that your company is definitely not too small to go global. And in fact, one of the stats that's out there and regularly quoted, 97% of U.S. exporters are small businesses. So you're in the right room, okay? So same thing. I'll keep going. If questions come up, Sarah, just stop me where we are, and we'll grab them as we go. But really, the key to going global with your business, and the question you've really got to answer, most important part of your journey, is understanding why you're pursuing it. And we're going to take a necessary detour, spend some time on strategy. In specific, we want to spend some time talking about your customers, your current markets, your capabilities, and a little bit about your competition as well, to ground us a bit in being able to answer that why in a meaningful way. Now, I love this quote. This one's been with me for a long time. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Too many companies jump right into the tactics for obvious reasons. That's the fun part. But it's like eating dessert before you eat the main course. It's not the most efficient way to do things. If you go down the path of tactics without strategy, I guarantee you're going to waste time and you're going to waste a lot of money. And again, taking that ready, fire, aim approach to things, that, let's just jump in and see what we learn. What you end up with is a really expensive fishing trip. There's no purpose. You meander around, you make some mistakes. Yes, you're going to learn something, but boy, do you really have time or the resources? I guess if you've got unlimited bales of cash, okay, have some fun. But most businesses I work with, if you're going to spend some money, you want to make sure you're going to get something back for it. So it's really important to work on that why and understand what's going on and what you really need to move your business forward. So time to jump in and talk about your customers and the markets that you have. So I want to talk about customers you have, customers you want, and understand a little about the competitors that exist. And I love this cartoon as well. Anybody that follows Tom Fishburne, the marketunist, he has, in a single snapshot, he encapsulates so much of what goes on in the real world of business today. And I love this one. You can have a seat at the table as soon as you can back up your marketing ideas with data. And that's so true. And you might think as a small company, well, getting data is hard or it's expensive, and it's neither of those things. So it's so important that you base your decisions on some quantitative information, not just qualitative data for you. So part of that first phase of the homework that we really need to do with regard to current customers, think about it. Your richest, most accessible, and quantifiable source of information on your product and your service and what you do comes from the customers you already have. If you have a big list, I recommend conducting a survey of some sort. If it's a smaller list, or if, like most businesses, kind of follows the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customer list, engage with them directly. Do some interviews with your biggest and best customers to learn about what they think of your business. Don't just ask why they love you. That's important, and I know you like to hear that, but ask them where and how you can improve. You also want to get some insights on why they selected your product or service versus the alternatives. And this will all become clear in a couple of slides, but you need to get grounded in really who you are and how does your current customer base perceive you. How are you seen relative to your competition? If your customer or market segment, it's another business, your B2B, do some online research in advance of your one-on-one meetings with them to see where else they operate in the world. Do they have other divisions domestically or internationally that maybe you're not selling to? Perhaps you can ask for an introduction. See, part of going global, and again, I'll go back to the tools, but part of going global is understanding, hey, I've got customers now. Where are they, and how do I best meet them? Keep in mind, e-commerce is one of the tools at your disposal. Okay, what we're going to do in this strategy phase is try and figure out, is that the best tool? Is that one of the tools you want to deploy, or is there another way that you can go about growing your business? Because after all, that's kind of why you're on the webinar today, right? It's about growth. And yeah, the e-commerce thing is of interest, and it might very well be the very best tool for you, but you kind of need to step back and you start with the strategy. Once you have that, then the tactics become clear. Okay. So we need to get some insight on those current customers, and when you invite them into the process, it's like, hey, we want to do more. We want to understand how we're doing, and why you selected us. It's that old thing, the Hawthorne effect. If anybody remembers that from your college days, or you've heard anything about it online, just by virtue of paying attention to your customers in a one-on-one basis. It's hard to do all the time with everyone, depending on some of your business models. But for the ones that you do reach out to, it matters to them, and they start to see you a little differently just by inviting them into the process. You're chalking up a lot of points with them. Okay. The second area you want to do some research on, and again, whether you do this yourself, you contract on the outside to have some of it done, the time and the cost commitments on these things, like everything else in the business world, aren't as costly as they used to be in the past. But now that you've got a profile of your ideal customer, which is that first part of homework, those are the people that are already buying from you and already like you, and you've done some digging to determine what are the characteristics. The marketing folks will talk to you about, let's create the persona. What do you think that's based on? It's these types of interviews. So now that you have that persona and you understand, boy, I need to find more like this that fit with me. Now you can start going out and looking at, okay, what other industries should I be looking at? You've got that starting point for understanding the new customers in new markets that you can contact. This is the point where, when you do some outreach with, if you're looking to expand internationally, if you do some outreach with the international partners, you start talking to American Chamber of Commerce, you start talking to the export or import development authorities in these different markets. Now you have something that you can really talk about. Hey, I'm Ray Zaganto from this company. Here's what I do. These are my products and services. My best customers look like this. Can you tell me about businesses that look like that in your area? Perhaps you can get introduced to some. That's where you really start making a connection between your business and those other markets. Okay. And those resources, those export development organizations, they have market research data at their fingertips. They can introduce you to well-informed resources on the ground in those markets that can help provide you with quantitative and qualitative information. You can do so much more research these days from your desk, from your office, from where you're based. 30 years ago, you had to get on an airplane. Yes, you could have some phone calls and exchange some faxes, but until you got there and really saw for yourself, early in the process, you really couldn't make much meaningful progress. Now it is much different. You can get much further down the research process now than you could before for a fraction of the money. Okay. So the summary point there is that until you understand your customers and the markets you serve or plan to serve, you're kind of guessing at the size of the opportunity and the commitment required to get where you want to be. That makes sense? You really need to understand who are my current customers, how many of them, or is there a sufficiently large chunk of them in this region that I think I want to get into, and do the research to determine that. Okay. The last phase of the homework you want to do is get some understanding of your competitors. What do you really know about them? There's buzz, there's facts, there's research, there's vendor insights. What you're really interested in looking at, and again, get past the other people, they're competitors, they're jerks, I don't like them. It's not high school. It's, they're out there serving a niche and a need. And it's in your best interest to understand what it is that they do. What do they do that overlaps with you? What do they do that's better? Where do you compete with them? Where do you absolutely run rings around them? Those are the things you need to be honest about. And that'll help inform you in this way. If there's one graphic when you download the slides and take a look at it, I have this over my desk every day, and I look at it, and it's really these points of intersection that are so important. And I'll walk you through it here. Ultimately, the goal is you want to get to that intersection there that says your value proposition, and more explicitly, it's your unique value proposition. Now, let's step back and see what these rings are. In the green, you've got the value that your company provides. That's what you figured out in the research that you did with your current customers, the folks that already like doing business with you. And you learned a lot about what it is that you bring that is unique. In the process of talking to your customers and doing some research, you found out what your customers really want. What are their things that really light them up, and what are the needs that you'd like to fulfill? In the research about your competitors, you got that red ring that kind of established, hey, here's what they do really well. Here's where they, not so good, and here's some stuff that we just don't even do. And to me, it's important to understand those intersection points at the bottom, and I'll take you through them real quick. So in those areas where your customer has something that they really want, and your competitor can fulfill that, but you don't, stay away from it. It means they likely have some expertise, or they have some line extension that you're not in. So were you to attempt to go in there, it's either going to be, you're either going to compete on, it'll be price, or it'll be a margin play, because you may have to try to find, hey, how can I buy something and resell it? So you just want to stay out of that area. in the segments where there's overlap, where you do something exactly the same way that your competitor does, that fulfills a need that the customer has, it's unoriginal. It's really not. Again, in most of these areas, you're gonna compete, probably based on price. You're really not going to stand out, and to the extent that you can stay within your lane, your real unique value proposition, your margins are typically higher, your relationships are stickier, and you're more likely to grow. So that unoriginal section, just avoid as well. And that other section where you find that you do something and your competitor does the same thing, but your customer really doesn't have a need for it. The hard truth is nobody cares. It's not a big point that you need to spend a lot of time on when you're engaging with your customer. So again, where you want to be is in that point where you're bringing your unique value proposition to the customers. Okay. What does that mean internationally? I like this slide. I'm kind of a student of all kinds of history. This is what was used before radar. This is a soldier, probably sometime early World War II, late World War I, probably World War II. They would use this to listen for the approach of aircraft because there wasn't an easy way to hear them. Now, what does this have to do with international commerce? Here's the thing. The further away your customers, current or targeted, the further away they are from your home market, your business, your message, you tend to lose volume and fidelity. It becomes more difficult for that potential customer that is far away from you. Could be across the country, could be across the world. The further away you are, there are other businesses in the area that may do similar things to you that are easier to identify, they're easier to hear from, and as a consequence, you're not so visible. So you need to kind of keep that in mind. There's very likely another you very close to that customer out there, okay? So what's important is you're going to have to find a way to stand out in that market. And I've got a quick example. It came from a friend of mine. His name is Andrew Deutsch. He's CEO and founder of a company called Fangled Tech. And if you happen to find him on LinkedIn, follow him. He does some really cool stuff. And he told an awesome story about a client he had that produced that fiber reinforced strapping tape that you probably see, anybody that's received a shipment on a skid, and there's this banding around there that holds all the packages onto the skid. And this company had a great market in the U.S. and they did it really well, and they're making tons of money and everything. And boy, we would like to sell this internationally. Wouldn't this be a great thing? Because surely everybody needs to use this type of strapping tape on their skids. It doesn't matter, where they are. So they went into, some international markets and they started saying, boy, we have this amazing strapping tape. And it was crickets. They attracted zero attention, and they learned a couple of lessons. One was that, a commodity item like that, in the transportation industry, in the shipping industry, there are many, 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 many local sources available for these things. In fact, many of them were often less expensive than what my friend's client was able to provide. So they sat back and said, okay, this was news to them. There was competition they hadn't expected, price pressure that they hadn't expected. They still saw big demand, and they had to pivot. And what they wound up doing is, instead of going in with a product, their high volume product that they thought was going to be, the one that was going to help them drive their export business, in reality, it turned out that the client company had some unique expertise in producing this type of strapping tape at a level of, at such a precise level that it was one of the few options available for high volume automated packaging machines. And when they did some research there, they found that there weren't any competitors in that space that could offer that automated tape solution. So the client pivoted, brought something that was unique to the region that added more value than just their standard product. And that was what allowed them to thrive. So the lesson there is, again, with distance, reduced volume and fidelity, clarity, and you really need to bring something unique. So that goes back to that unique value proposition for you. Okay. Then, of course, there's that whole language thing. And we'll touch on that a little bit. But yeah, it is a thing. We're fortunate English is still spoken in many countries around the world, and it's in many areas the language of business. But depending on, if you're B2B, that's one thing. If you're B2C, there are other challenges you really need to keep in mind. Again, I like this slide in a English as a second language class. Tonight's language class has been canceled. And what did you write it on the board in? You wrote it in English. And that's a challenge we need to overcome. And I'm going to address that in the next section here. Thought I'd catch a break and just kind of recap where we are. So there's a good time. Take a break. How many new customers, do you really need to acquire in order to meet your goals? That's something you should keep in mind. It's easy, particularly in the manufacturing space. I come out of contract manufacturing, and that was a business where 10 or 12 customers could drive your future growth for years. So the prospect of adding, one or two was a huge impact on the business, and you tend to market differently, based on that. So that's something, you want to keep in mind as well. But what I want to point out and kind of remind everybody, the shortest path to that growth is understand your persona, understand those new markets, understand your competition, what's there, and understand that, now that you've got the strategy and research, we can really dig in and start doing something. So I want you to be confident at this point. I don't want you to be afraid of international and doing that sort of expansion. Love this image. Whatever you're doing today, do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old in a Batman shirt. Love that kid. So on to the whether you decide to go global or not, something to keep in mind is, the digital genie is already out of the bottle, and I want to make some distinctions there. Pre-COVID, it was a source of great convenience. The visible example being like Amazon. Everybody kind of got used to being able to do stuff online from their phone. It was a very convenient B2C, type play. During COVID, we learned that shopping online was a matter of necessity. We couldn't meet, but we had to function. Look how quickly curbside pickup became a thing, everywhere. And in fact, with restrictions easing a bit, it's still a new convenience thing that people like. Post-COVID, it's going to become a source of innovation for companies that embrace it. There's really no going back on this one. So what I want to do is kind of, at this point, kind of snap a line and draw a distinction and a definition about e-commerce, and what it is. And it's any system, tool, or marketplace that allows your customers to complete the entire buying cycle with your company online from any device, anytime. This used to be solely a B2C model, but the reality is in B2B, that convenience is finding its way there. I mean, the current statistics are your online presence is so critical that, at this point, something like 70% of the research that goes into the typical selling cycle for a B2B client, 70% of it happens online before a prospective buyer ever reaches out to a company to either talk to somebody, download some information, or whatever. So much of the transaction is now online. So you have to have that in mind no matter what your business is to make it easy for customers or prospective customers to be able to engage with you. My good friend Kurt Anderson, and if he's another guy you need to follow online, B2B Tail is his business, but Kurt is an e-commerce guru, and he says, you know what? Your customers need to be, you need to be thinking that your customer, if they want to, they can buy from you or engage with you midnight on a Friday and not have to wait until you open the doors on Monday. That's really what you need to be looking at. And for manufacturers, this can mean everything from something as basic as an electronic data interchange. If you're B2B, is your customer still sending you an email with an attachment that has their purchase orders and releases? Have you asked them if they have an EDI system? Would it be easier if they just pushed that data out into your system without having to, for somebody there to have to download, create a PDF or whatever it is, put it in an email, send it to you, wait for a confirmation? That's friction. That is not smooth. And having a conversation with a customer to just smooth that process is a step towards e-commerce. So don't get caught up where it's like, man, I'm not on Alibaba, so I'm not doing e-commerce. Part of it is find ways that smooth that buying experience for your customers. That's one way. Okay. And this has been around for a long time. So it's not a new tool, and it's really no longer optional for you to deploy. So be thinking about that. 70% do the research online before they ever reach out. If you don't have a presence or a way for them to engage you outside of business hours, you're behind. If you currently have customers that are still, emailing, faxing, whatever it happens to be, that's a point of friction. And if you remove it, it's going to make things more smooth for those customers. And part of it is, you can do a simple e-commerce audit yourself. And part of that is do a little bit of mapping, the customer journey. And I know there's tools and techniques for doing this type of thing, but even very simply, from that initial inquiry to order placement, to shipping confirmation, to order, to invoicing, to payment, look at all the points where your customer is waiting for a reply or engagement from you or your team before things can move forward. We used to think, boy, if we build these gates, then we've got them. That's a way. Now we can talk to them. Now we've got them cornered and can really pitch them or whatever. But the problem is we've been Amazoned. There is this in our daily lives. There is this seamless experience that we're used to, and we really want to see that in other areas of our lives, particularly on the business side. So, a tip in this area: if you're seeing multiple manual touch points, they present an opportunity to streamline the customer experience. Okay, it'll require changes in processes and tools. So be sure to keep your team members involved. Again, this is important. So if you're going to remember anything, write this one down. Don't hatch an e-commerce strategy in your conference room and then spring it on everybody else. Okay, get them involved in the process. Processes evolve over time, and the people that are executing them currently are probably so close to them, they may not yet be sensitive to what changes are that are needed. Get them involved in that process, even in the mapping that's going on. And it's okay to have a conversation, and you're going to bump into, but we've always done it this way. It's like, well, that's okay, but we need to do it better. So what are your ideas? How can we get there? Okay. Involve the team. That's so important. So some of the key steps in international e-commerce success, that's the route you need to go in. Identifying that international market potential. We had talked about that. Understanding the challenges of international e-commerce. There are going to be some things on duty. There are some things freight charges. There are going to be some things to look at in terms of, do you need to, are you sending in a food product? Does it need some sort of registration? Those are all issues. Don't be afraid of them. There's a lot of help and resources that can help you navigate those things. I'll talk a bit about the importance of localizing by market. It's not a one size fits all. What works in the U.S. doesn't necessarily work in Sweden, doesn't necessarily work in Hong Kong. So there are some localization things you want to work out, figuring out payment currencies, and then ultimately, pulling the trigger and going, with it. So a couple of things to keep in mind on global e-commerce, kind of some high level issues. The top mistakes businesses can make with a global expansion is making a significant investment up front before validating that your brand resonates with the target consumers. Again, the importance of testing, knowing the buyers, knowing your market, knowing how they buy things is so important in your target region or country. Total landed cost, that's something you're going to get familiar. That includes product costs, door-to-door shipping fees, import customs and duties, tax obligations. If you don't figure that out on the way in and make it clear to the international customers, that's a biggie. One of the things, one of the quickest ways to get a potential purchase abandoned in the shopping basket on your site is to be vague about pricing. It's some astronomically high number that folks will just bail on the transaction if they're not clear on what it's going to cost. The legal and tax stuff, I just point out it's necessary, but don't be afraid of it. There's a lot of ways you can get help in those areas. Okay. Talked about localization and the importance. Localize everything. If you're expanding into markets that aren't similar to your home market, you need to translate nearly every facet of your site, including language. This is another one. 75% of shoppers won't consider buying from a site that's not in their language. B2B is a little different. Again, English as a language of business is in most areas is still okay to get by. B2C, different story. The important thing in here is create the illusion you are right next door to your target customer. Okay. So in summary, digital tools and the latest techniques are necessary and available to everybody that chooses to participate in e-commerce. Okay. And that's based on, I know you've had some other access to some other presenters that have some excellent details and things you can engage with and build in as well. Going global via e-commerce or brick and mortar or some type of hybrid version in between is no longer something that only big companies do. That goes back to creating that illusion of proximity. You can make it seem as though you are right in somebody's backyard 7,000 miles away, no problem. And no matter what direction you decide to go in next, base your decisions on research, data, and analysis of your company, your customer, and your competition. And that's all more accessible than it used to be. So with that said, that's what I have for everyone today. If there are any other questions, either now or, as Sarah mentioned, I'll be available for office hours and would love to speak with any of you one-on-one. Had some great conversations the last time I was privileged enough to present. I'm pretty easy to find. You've got my email and contact information there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Would enjoy connecting with anyone that is so inclined. I've got a fantastic network. Would be happy to make any introductions, provide any help that I possibly can as you pursue your global journey. So once again, thank you all so much for your time and your kind attention. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray. I really appreciate the thought you put into this presentation, keeping it nice and interesting. I loved the little TV and movie references that were thrown in throughout. So I just want to reiterate what Ray said. One is the office hours, so please do reference the 2 links I put in the chat. We do have a link to the office hours at 1 p.m. I more than encourage you to join, even if you're thinking, I don't know if I had a specific question, but I just kind of want to pick someone's brain on what the next step for me would be. Please do use that link and just hop right on with us at 1 o'clock, because we can definitely provide some value and direction for you there. And then I also put a link to our survey in the chat. So if you have been on our webinars before, you do know that we have to send a survey after every single session. That's what allows us to continue to provide these at no cost to you, the business owner. So please just let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see in the future. That is incredibly valuable to us. And with that, I think we just have a couple more minutes here, Ray. So I'm just going to put one question out there, and
Sure.
then I think we can close it out.
Okay.
But for the people on the call, we just heard all about how to make sure that international is right for you, making sure that you're using the right marketing strategy, meeting the right kind of people. If you were a small business, because I know we have a lot of them on the call who are just a one-person, two-person business maybe,
Hmm.
trying to figure out the best way to go global via getting online, would you recommend utilizing third-party platforms or building your own website? Or, I mean, where would you say is the first step for someone?
What for the solopreneur or the smaller business owner that's on the session today? My recommendation would be have conversations with the likes of Shopify, Alibaba in their U.S. presence is remarkably motivated to help small businesses get going. They've already been down this path. So I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. So my recommendation would be there's some awesome folks to talk to in those organizations. They're already kind of the big kids on the block doing this type of stuff, and they have so many resources that they can help you with. In a lot of cases, they either have the templates already available, they already have the plugins to be able to help you with freight and duty and those types of things. So start by asking the questions first. There is no need to go this alone or to have to build it out on your own.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that
Mm-hmm.
last little bit of advice here. We're going to go ahead and close it out a couple minutes early,
Sure.
give everyone a bit of a break, and then if you would like to join us back at 1 o'clock, we are more than happy to see you there. All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.